Welcome to the final installment of my trio of videos detailing 2 Trench Crusade Warbands built at the 700 Ducat level for campaign play out of the Warbands available through the official Kickstarter / backer kit link below. These warbands should be easy enough to scale up to the 900 Ducat skirmish variants following the same principles if one so chooses. Today we're focusing on the remaining warbands, the Principality of New Antioch, and the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent. In the first video of this series, I discuss more in depth the numbers behind the game, so check that out if you're wondering why I prioritize getting +1 dice on so many things. The much more industrialized Faithful faction, New Antioch fights utilizing cutting-edge technology to even the playing field with hell, with many rapid-fire weapons, an extremely diverse arsenal, high explosives, and advanced squad tactics. They are a highly flexible army that even with the exact same unit, changing weaponry around will produce significantly different effects. The faction makes use of fire teams and has a unique buff to them. Fire teams allow you to basically have 2 models sharing an activation, where you can do actions with either model in any order without your opponent getting a turn in between. This opens up tactical flexibility and significant ability to burst down one target, but of course has the trade-off of using multiple models at once, potentially giving your opponent more freedom at the end of the turn if you don't reduce their options. Also, be extra careful with risky actions when using fire teams, as they end the turn for both models. New Antioch has a special feature where if a fire team member attacks a model that's already been attacked by another fire team member, it can trigger Bloodbath with only 3 blood markers rather than the usual 6, even when the target is not downed. 3 blood markers in one turn between 2 units is actually relatively achievable, especially if prioritizing hits over downing / kill potential. This really emphasizes the nature of the fire team being that the idea that you're supposed to focus a single target down as quickly as possible, allowing grunts to take down bigger threats far easier. Notably, this faction doesn't have much melee emphasis in this composition. In general, we're going to be trying to avoid that as often as possible. The New Antioch warband consists of 1 lieutenant, 1 sniper priest, 1 combat engineer, a heavy mechanized infantry, and 4 yeomen, 2 of which have been upgraded to trench moles. The lieutenant is your standard leader unit stat line with tough and uniquely has the ability to try to force your opponent to activate a visible unit. This ability is one that can situationally be extremely powerful. Forcing an activation can mess up optimal turn sequences while allowing you to deny potential recovery of, say, a downed unit, for example. Equipment-wise, just some reinforced armor, an automatic rifle, and also a sword. The automatic rifle allows for 2 attacks at 24 inches, which with the lieutenant's stat line means that you're usually going to get the full 2 attacks, and a charge on top if applicable, as the weapon has assault properties. One of your 3 durable units in this warband, and of the 3, he's the most suited as a midline unit. Taking full advantage of his high hit rate, even at long range, and his multi-hit gun to support the yeomen who need to get closer in order to be effective. Being able to see more targets for his activation ability adds more options, and usually is best spent trying to either prevent units from getting finished off, or allowing your other units to get where they need to go more safely. The sword is chosen for this unit, as it is the only unit in this warband that has a decent chance of benefiting from the critical keyword with his +2 to melee attack rolls. The sniper priest is a fun unit. It has an active and passive ability, passive making it so that your opponent can only use blood markers for injury rolls on the unit, so you'll never have extra negative modifiers to shooting that aren't range or cover. This means that having a risky weapon such as the sniper rifle is less of a burden once the unit has been hit, as they'll be operating at peak performance at all times. The active is very interesting, where you can take a risky action to add +2 dice to the already great +2 the unit has for ranged attacks. The reason you'd ever want to do this is specifically for critical fishing with the sniper rifle, and also maybe if your opponent has a bunch of defensive modifiers. The sniper rifle having a +1 dice built in, combined with the +4 from the aim, means that you're rolling 7 dice, resulting in a 99% hit chance, but more importantly a 33% critical chance, which with the sniper means it'll ignore armor on critical shots. Without aiming, this is still a respectable 19% crit chance, with a 95% hit chance, so it's really only worth it if you specifically need a critical this exact turn or need to, say, pierce a Black Rail Shield's defenses. I have him as part of the fire team with frontline combat engineer under the pretense of having the engineer soften up the target with grenades and firing to allow the sniper priest to trigger Bloodbath on its turn. In this warband, we can't really afford to give him armor, although one could downgrade some yeoman equipment and spend it elsewhere if needed, which is less of a problem as theoretically he should be as far away as possible from the conflict with his 48-inch range gun, which is the entire map, safely outside the range of most weapons, and at the very least within long range for all weapons. This does mean, though, that you'll have to watch out for flanks and infiltrators seeking to close this defensive gap, ideally having a midline unit capable of assisting if need be. Speaking of the Combat Engineer is a quite tanky land, with his armor acting as reinforced with the extra benefit of ignoring shrapnel bonus markers and having weapons that use shrapnel be worse at injuring him. We do not make use of satchel charges here at the 700 ducat threshold, as it's really hard to justify a 15 ducat consumable that would render the engineer subsequently useless at range, which is where his +1 dice stat is. We give him grenades instead, with the hopes of using it to apply enough blood markers to assist the sniper with the actual killing of tough targets. As he has a +1 with range, we give him a bolt action rifle to have a serviceable long range option, switching to the grenades as one gets closer. Ending the turn with a fortified attempt is a solid option, allowing for more brazen movement across no man's land as one can make their own cover. The bayonet exists just as a necessity due to preferring close range engagements or the necessary charge. This guy is your durable frontline unit who should always be in the front there trying to soften up targets for his allies, and specifically for his fireteam pair sniper, or you can use him to brazenly push objectives. Try to stay out of melee though when possible, ideally only charging when you need to finish off a target the sniper is downed, or that you've already thrown a grenade at and want to make use of the stacks of blood markers. The mechanized heavy infantry is our power armor user, and with that we can bring the heavy firepower along. With the upgraded machine armor, this unit has -3 to injury value without using a shield, and ignores the down status completely, meaning that you're really going to have to kill this guy outright rather than relying on down to make bloodbath achievable. We combine this tankiness with a machine gun, which gives the unit 3 attacks that can target separate units. At 36-inch range, this unit can take up sentry positions and lock down entire lanes while still being able to keep up with the main body of the assault if need be. It also has a trench club for the inevitable attempts to charge this unit in order to stop it from firing its very dangerous firearm, but honestly one should probably just ease the attack of opportunity, disengage, and then shoot the enemy with your machine gun at point blank range, shredding the attacker. As 12 is the only injury roll that really matters to this unit, this allows you to take these risky decisions with a lot more confidence that even other factions' tanks don't exactly have the freedom to, since they have to still worry about being down. This unit is really looking to be at the center of the battlefield, holding or bearing down on no man's land with his extreme firepower and durability. We didn't put him in a fire team for the sole reason that the machine gun forces an end to an activation, so he wouldn't be able to benefit from the theoretical 3 to 5 blood markers it could apply in a single attack for fireteam bloodbath purposes. And of course, we finally swing around to the base infantry. We take 2 trench moles, which just means that they can infiltrate, and give one a flamethrower and the other a shotgun with a medkit. The idea of these 2 guys is ideally to grab an objective early and hold it for either reinforcements or just annoyance purposes. Ideally, an objective inside a building would allow the flamethrower and the poor stat lines to work optimally, since it's guaranteed to hit within range. These are not assassination squads, outside of very specific circumstances. They are primarily deterrents and will push forward only when the main body of the warband catches up. We make them a fire team so that way they can get onto objectives or repel defenders at the same time, rather than giving the chance for the inactivated one to be killed in between activations. If in range, the flamer should go first, as they can reliably get 2 markers on the enemy, assuming they're not fire resistant, which then the shotgun could reliably make use of to finish off the enemy. If you find this strategy not to your liking, placing these soldiers with normal yeomen and replacing the flamer with another shotgun frees up 40 ducats that you can spend on either weaponry upgrades for the combat engineer or armor for the sniper priest. The other 2 are base yeomen, with both with shotguns to help out with their poor accuracy. These really are just supplemental units for either reinforcing the trench moles or supplementing the combat engineer's efforts to help the sniper priest eliminate high value targets. Unlike the other factions, since almost all of our good units in this warband have very strong, very long-range options with multiple attacks in some cases, we can be more conservative with our base soldiers and prioritize accuracy buffs at the cost of completely giving up on range, with the sole intent being peppering enemies to get singular blood markers in play and grab objectives. These singular blood markers make achieving bloodbath for the fire teams far easier, as both fire teams theoretically can apply 2 to 3 markers relatively easily, but have difficulty getting another attack on top of that to use them, meaning starting off with 1 is very appreciated. Here is a brief summary of the warband unit cost, with gear included. The lieutenant costs 154 ducats, 84 of that being equipment. The sniper priest costs 85, 35 from the sniper rifle. The combat engineer costs 99 ducats, but only 19 are from equipment. The mechanized infantry cost 148 ducats, with 63 of that coming from his equipment. The 2 yeomen cost 42 ducats each, 12 for each's equipment. The flamethrower trench mole costs 73 ducats, with 33 of that being in equipment, and the shotgun mole costs 57, with 17 being equipment. So in total, we end up at 700 out of 700 ducats. Moving on to the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent, which will be shortening to the Court from here on. This faction has a lot of unique things, but annoyingly for this video, there's no standard warband variant, as the faction has you choose a sin to devote yourself to that decides what spells and abilities you'll have access to. Which means theoretically I should be doing 5 different warbands here, but I'm not going to do that. We're going to keep it simple and work with Wrath, which is entirely passive oriented. This faction is also quite tight to make work within the 700 ducat limit if you're utilizing the full roster of units provided in the Kickstarter. So, if some equipment here seems sparse, it's because just the 3 Hell Knights alone without any gear take up almost half the budget by themselves. You can easily drop one and spread the savings around if one so chooses, but for here we're trying to make use of every model you're given. As mentioned, this faction has different sins it can align to and unlock new goetic spells, which are the faction's unique mechanic where they can spend blood markers on non-demonic or black rail units to perform spells, giving another option for using those markers applied to your opponent's models. Since everything you have has those keywords, you can't spend your own markers in this warband composition, sadly. The demonic units of this faction do not take any bonus markers from fire, rendering flamethrower units significantly worse off. This warband composition is heavily melee focused, as the only unit with even +1 to ranged attacks is a sorcerer, and due to cost restrictions it's difficult to get too much good equipment, so we're sticking to the strengths while at least applying some form of flexibility where able. Game plan is simple. Hell Knights charge into the enemy and shrugging off attacks and dealing tons of damage, while the Yokes and Pit Locusts builds up blood markers for Sorcerer and Hell Knights to make use of. Let's start with the Yoke Fiends, since they're fairly simple. They're all equipped with the most cost-efficient loadout they can have. Just an arquebus. With 18-inch range, this gun is strictly a worse-off bolt-action rifle, but it is also usable as a trench club, making it effectively a 5-cost gun with a 3-cost melee weapon attached to it, rendering it very cost-effective. The gun part is just to have some ranged option available, but since the Yoke Fiends have +1 to melee and a mandatory charge attempt if in range of an enemy, having the melee option is far more important aspect that we can get for this price point. They're really just bodies, but aren't too good at holding objectives since they'll be forced off of them pretty easily, and they're best suited for suiciding into the enemy in an effort to score some markers for your more impactful units to make use of. There just isn't the cost available to make them good without significantly hampering our elites. The Pit Locust is the agility unit of this warband. Not only have an enhanced movement of 8 inches, but flying on top means they can assault fortified positions with ease. They get a bonus attack with shrapnel when they charge, which combined with the +2 melee stat and reinforced armor means they'll be hitting often while having the survivability to run at stronger units or groups. I put the Crown of Hellfire on this Locust in order to further improve its blood marker producing ability, applying a fire-based blood marker to opponents in melee with it at the end of the turn, meaning often you can get 2 to 3 blood markers per turn of this unit. This is both helpful for killing, but also the extra marker applying at the end of the turn informs you that it's either meant to be used defensively or for other units' goetic magic. It also causes fear, which is useful for keeping it alive even more so than the armor already does. This unit is large though, so you should take that into consideration when using it. Next up is the Sorcerer. In the Wrath warband, this guy doesn't get too much to work with, and since our points are so tight, he's effectively unequipped. He just has his spells going for them, which isn't great and requires setup, so he usually won't be going until the end of the turn sequence for the first round at least. He has a quite powerful spell though, in the form of Burning Inferno, which effectively operates as a grenade launcher with 36-inch range. Fire instead of shrapnel, variable blast radius, and most importantly, the ability to ignore armor on direct hits. The +1 to range attack makes it so that this is consistent at short range, which for this weapon is up to 18 inches, which is pretty good. Although I try, if possible, to avoid using it at long range, since you're spending a finite resource on the attack, so you want better odds than the neutral roll. His other spell is basically variable armor based on the number of markers spent, which isn't the best as it has to be cast before the injury roll is made, but it's nice to have the option at the very least. This is not armor and is an effect on the roll itself. Instead, weapons that ignore armor shouldn't apply to this. So, has a certain niche where it's very valuable. He also flies, so try to keep him elevated for bonuses or otherwise out of harm's way, since he is kind of a brick that sits on objectives if there are no markers for him to use. And finally, the very last group of units, the Hell Knights. We actually have 3 different loadouts in this group that align more with their models than most of the builds we've done so far. These guys are at the core of this warband, both in durability, damage, and versatility. All Hell Knights have a +2 to melee, strong, and come equipped with infernal iron armor, and finally have blood magic. The two unique things here are the armor, which is just reinforced armor that ignore armor, and the blood magic, which allows them to spend a blood marker to add an injury dice to their attacks. Since this is done after confirming whether an attack lands, this is an all-around great way of increasing the lethality of your Hell Knight units as need be. Now you may ask, how is this different from just spending a blood marker normally? Well, goetic spells do not have to draw from the target of the spell, so this effectively allows you to redistribute blood markers from less important units to the ones you are actively engaged with. The armor is self-explanatory at this point. Ignoring one of the primary ways to deal with tanky units means that knights are going to be very difficult to kill. The first Hell Knight is who I envision as the leader of the warband. As such, he wields a shield and a helmet, making him even tankier than his armor already would indicate, while also being equipped offensively with the Hellblade, which is a sword that has fire and +1 to injury rolls, making it very lethal and good at applying markers when it does not kill. He has also been given the goetic spell passive of Blind Range, which gives him a +1 to dash rolls, drastically improving his reliability of map transversal and distance closing for charges. Idea behind him is simple: charge everything, kill it quickly, and move on, while being an absolute hassle to deal with armor-wise. The second Hell Knight is the range support. Although of course he still has the sword, his main appeal is the Ophidian rifle he wields, which inverts the penalties for long range and cover. This means that if your opponent is between 15 and 30 inches away, behind cover, the rifle has a +2 to hit, making up for the Hell Knight's neutral natural shooting ability. This means to avoid getting shot, you have to be standing in the open at close range, which means you're within charging range for Hell Knight 1 or 3, or even this Hell Knight itself. He's perfect for sitting back at a secure objective as he benefits from longer range as mentioned. Last is the Great Axe wielding Hell Knight with a helmet. A supplemental frontliner, he has a Great Axe to not only match the model, but because it fits the Ducat limit, whereas another Hellblade does not. It still has the +1 dice on injury rolls, but also has the critical tag, which at +2 melee dice is not unfeasible to achieve. This guy is simply a tough frontline unit whose goal is to take out the targets that the Yoke Fiends are having difficulty killing. So, in summary, Hell Knight with shield costs 145, 45 being from equipment, the one with the rifle costs 129, and the one with the Great Axe costs 117. These three guys by themselves ate up 391 of the 700 Ducat army limit, so you can see why this warband is exceptionally tight on equipment. The Yoke Fiends are identical and cost 38 Ducats each, for a total of 114 from them. The Pit Locust normally costs 90, but we gave it to Crown, bringing it up to 105. This leaves only 90 Ducats for the Sorcerer, who costs 75 Ducats at base with no spells, meaning we end up exactly at 700 Ducats when taking Burning Inferno. The only adjustments you can reasonably make here involve moving a bit of the equipment cost from the Hell Knights or Pit Locust to the Sorcerer, giving it either armor or a standard weapon. And that's that! 6 entire warbands ready to go, hopefully to inspire your own tinkering and give you a sense of the options available from each faction. Thanks for watching if you made it this far, and let me know if there's anything you'd like me to take a look at in the future.